NVIDIA was up 171% in 2024 alone. S&P 500 has almost given 82% return in the last 5 years. And Taiwan Semiconductor, a company most Indians have never even heard of, has given about 88% returns in the last 1 year. None of this was accessible if you only invested in India. And you know what? India is just 4 to 5% of the total global stock market. So if your entire portfolio is in India, you're simply ignoring 95% of the world's listed companies. But here's another interesting part of the story. You're already a global investor. Every time an Indian family buys gold, they're investing in a global asset. India doesn't produce gold, we import it. Price moves with global demand and the dollar. But today we are going to make global investing more deliberate and practical. This is that one video you need to watch to understand everything you need to know before investing globally. Hi, I'm Aparna, and in this video I'll walk you through how much you should invest globally, the specific funds and ETFs to look at with real numbers, how to compare them properly, and the risks you need to watch out for. So let's get right into it. But first, here's why you can't ignore global investing. Let me put the risk of not going global into one example. Japan, one of the most sophisticated economies in the world. Great companies, strong engineering, powerful brands. And yet, anyone who put their entire portfolio into Japanese stocks in 1989 had to wait 35 years just to break even. Not 35 years to make returns, 35 years to get back to zero. Adjusted for inflation, they actually lost money in real terms. That's what happens when you concentrate everything in one country and that country's cycle turns. Now, I'm not saying India will go the same route, but here's what I'm saying. Why take that risk when the world is accessible to you? Especially when India is only 4 to 5% of global markets, which means Apple, Nvidia, TSMC, Google, the biggest, most profitable companies on earth are completely outside your portfolio right now. Going global doesn't mean giving up on India, it just means you're not putting all your eggs in one country's basket. So how much you should actually allocate globally? So let me tell you. For most retail investors, 10 to 20% of your total portfolio is good enough. At this level, you get real diversification. Different currency, different economic cycles, different sectors without going overboard or losing touch with India. Now, if you're a high net worth investor, this can go up to 25 to 40%, but 10 to 20% is disciplined, balanced, and more than enough to make a meaningful difference. So then how do you actually put that money to work? Let's understand that. Route number 1 is international mutual funds. If you want the simplest possible entry point, this is it. You invest in rupees, you get returns in rupees. No foreign account, no wire transfer, no extra paperwork. SIP works exactly like any other mutual fund you've ever set up. Honestly, the only thing that's different is where your money goes. Now within this, you will see two types of structures. First is feeder funds. Your money flows into one big global fund managed by an international asset manager. So if a feeder fund tracks the S&P 500, you are essentially co-investing with millions of global investors in America's 500 biggest companies. Second is fund of funds. Instead of going into one fund, your money spreads across multiple global funds and ETFs. More diversification, though usually a slightly higher cost. Now, the next obvious question is, how do we actually check all these details? How do we know the returns, the expense ratio, which schemes are available, and which fund houses are offering them? So the answer is, head over to RupeeVest, go to the mutual fund screener, now filter by equity, international. You will see the full list of international equity mutual fund schemes all in one place. Right now, you can see around 8 funds in this category. Now, we have shortlisted the top 5 by AUM. First one is Motilal Oswal S&P 500 Index Fund. The expense ratio for this is around 0.65% and it tracks the 500 biggest US companies. Low cost, passive and clean. Second is ICICI Prudential Nasdaq 100 Index Fund. It tracks the top 100 tech-heavy US companies. High returns historically, but also more volatile. Third one is ICICI Prudential US Blue Chip Equity Fund. This is actively managed and it invests in large US companies. The expense ratio is above 1%. Fourth one is Nippon India US Equity Opportunities Fund. This is also actively managed and is US focused. And the last one is Nippon India Taiwan Equity Fund. This one has the highest returns of the lot in the last 3 years, but it's also the most volatile so far. Now let me tell you how to actually compare them. So mostly these three numbers matter. Past returns are the first thing everyone looks at, but honestly they can be misleading. A fund that gave 30% last year might have fallen 40% the year before. So here's what I'd suggest. Go to Morningstar, look up each fund and check these three numbers, all based on the last 3 years. Sharpe ratio. This tells you how much return the fund generated for every unit of risk it took on. Think of it as return efficiency. Higher is better. ICICI Nasdaq 100 leads the pack at 1.55. Motilal S&P 500 comes in at 1.37. These two have been the most efficient. Next is standard deviation. This tells you how bumpy the ride has been. How much does the fund swing up and down? The Nippon Taiwan fund is at nearly 25. That's almost double the others, which mostly sit between 12 and 15. So if you're someone who checks your portfolio every week, that kind of swing can feel very uncomfortable. Then the third number you should look at is maximum drawdown. This is the deepest the fund has ever fallen from its peak. Taiwan fell over 21% at its worst point. The US focused funds were around 10 to 12%. So here's the honest read on all of this. Taiwan has given the best headline returns, but with the biggest drops and most volatile journey. Nasdaq 100 hits the sweet spot of strong returns and reasonable volatility. S&P 500 is the stable, steadier ride of the lot. Don't just pick the one with the highest return on the chart. Pick the one whose risk profile you can actually live with. Now let's look at the second route you can take to invest globally, global ETFs listed in India. They give you the same global exposure as mutual funds, but with one difference. These trade on Indian stock exchanges like a regular share. Open your Demat account, search the ETF, click buy. That's literally it. No foreign accounts, no forms, no waiting. For researching ETFs, I'd suggest Trendline. It gives you price data and liquidity data together. And liquidity matters more than most people realize with ETFs. So here are the top 5 global ETFs by AUM in India. And let me also tell you what makes each one different. Number 1 is Motilal Oswal Nasdaq 100 ETF, the most liquid global ETF in India, tracking the top 100 US tech companies. Also, tracking error for this is a very tight 0.06%, so we can say liquid and efficient. Second is Mirae Asset NYSE FANG Plus ETF. This one is a concentrated bet on just 10 mega US tech names. Meta, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, Nvidia, and a few others. High conviction, higher volatility. But tracking error is impressively tight at 0.04%. Now the third one is Mirae Asset S&P 500 Top 50 ETF. This is the top 50 companies from the S&P 500. The most stable option of these 5, tracking error around 0.05%. Fourth is Nippon India Hang Seng Bees. This gives you exposure to Hong Kong's biggest companies. The tracking error moves slightly higher here, above 0.1%. And the fifth one is Mirae Asset Hang Seng Tech ETF. This one gives you China tech exposure. Highest tracking error of the 5. Different geography, more potential volatility. Now here's the good news on liquidity. All 5 show strong trading volumes. That matters because a thinly traded ETF creates a wide gap between the price you buy and the price you can sell at. And that gap is a silent cost. These 5 don't have that problem. So on tracking, all these US focused ETFs are very tight. China and Hong Kong ones show slightly more deviation. Small difference today, but it compounds over years. Now here's a very important thing you need to know before you invest in ETFs. So please stay with me here. The RBI sets limits on how much Indian mutual funds can invest abroad in total. When those limits get fully used up, fund houses have to stop taking fresh money for overseas investments until some room opens again. Now here's where it gets dangerous. When a global ETF hits that limit, it effectively becomes a closed product. The fund house can't create new units, supply is frozen. But investor demand doesn't stop. People still want global exposure. So what do? They start buying existing units from each other on the stock exchange. And when demand stays high but supply is completely fixed, the price gets bid up, way above the ETF is actually worth. So if you see Nippon Hang Seng Bees is trading at 21% above its actual value. Mirae Hang Seng Tech ETF is 23% above its actual value. Mirae S&P 500 Top 50 is 18 to 19% above actual value. And NYSE FANG Plus is 18 to 19% above actual value. Think about what that actually means for you as an investor. The stocks inside that ETF are worth 100 rupees, but you're paying 120 or 123 rupees to buy it. You're down 20% before the market has moved a single point. That's not an investment, that's a very expensive mistake. And here's the part that really stings. The moment RBI relaxes these limits, which they may do, new units get created, which means the supply floods back in. And that premium collapses almost overnight. Your ETF falls 15 to 20%, even though the underlying global market didn't crash at all. You lose money purely because of the price you paid on day one. But there's also a fix for this, and it literally takes 2 minutes. Before buying any global ETF, check the INAV or the indicative NAV. This is the live, real-time estimate of what the ETF actually holds. If the market price is sitting well above the INAV, you're paying a premium. Walk away. Now you can check this on the NSE website or on the fund houses page directly. Just 2 minutes. Please do it every time. Now one more thing. Because of these regulatory caps, some international mutual funds are currently only open for SIP. Lump sum is paused. If you are fully closed to new investments, always check what's actually open before you try to invest. Now, there are 3 main risks you need to be aware of before you invest globally. Number 1 is currency risk and why it actually works in your favor most of the time. When you invest globally, your return has 2 moving parts: how the global market performs and how the rupee moves against the dollar. Here's the thing most people don't realize. Historically, the rupee has weakened against the dollar by about 3.5 to 4% per year on average. That's actually a tailwind for you. If your global fund returns 10% in dollar terms and the rupee weakens 4% that same year, your actual return in rupees is roughly 14%. The currency movement adds to your gains. But, and this is important, it cuts both ways. In years where the rupee strengthens, your dollar returns shrink when they are converted back. So currency can boost your returns or reduce them depending on the year. Usually over the long term, the trend favors global investors, but any given year can go either way. Now the second risk is global market risk. Different countries go through different and their own cycles. The US has been on a remarkable long run. China has struggled, Japan stagnated for decades. Going global diversifies which cycle you're riding, but it doesn't remove volatility. You will still have ups and downs just from different sources. Now, the last risk is premium and tracking risk. We covered this in detail. Always check INAV before buying a global ETF. And if you're buying China or Hong Kong ETFs, you should know that the tracking error will be slightly higher than US-focused ones. So today we covered mutual funds and ETFs, the 2 most retail-friendly routes to invest globally. But there are 2 more. The LRS route, where you invest directly in international stocks and ETFs from your own account. And the second is the Gift City route, which is newer and increasingly interesting. Both deserve their own detailed video. If you want us to do part 2 on this, drop a comment below. If enough of you ask, we'll definitely do a detailed breakdown on this too. If this was useful, hit like, share it with someone who's been thinking about global investing but hasn't started yet, and subscribe so that you can catch part 2 when it drops. See you in the next one.
Investments in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.